I spent over 20 years growing vegetables and honestly believed I was doing everything right until one season when I tracked my actual harvests and realized I was getting barely 40% of what my garden could produce. That was a humbling moment. The turning point came when I started looking at the specific vegetables mentioned throughout the Bible, plants like lentils, leeks, garlic, cucumbers, and others that have been cultivated for thousands of years. And I discovered that these are some of the most nutritionally dense, medicinally potent, and surprisingly easy to grow crops you can put in a home garden. Today, I am walking you through 15 biblical vegetables that carry real, documented healing properties and that you can grow right at home in your own backyard or raised beds. And the last one on this list is the one that genuinely changed how I think about growing food for health. After years of completely overlooking it, plus after we get through all 15, I have a bonus technique I stumbled onto that makes these already powerful vegetables even more nutrient dense. It is something I wish I had learned a decade ago. Here is the principle that ties all of this together. These ancient crops were not selected by accident. Over millennia, people cultivated the vegetables that kept them alive, that healed wounds, settled stomachs, reduced inflammation, and provided dense nutrition from small growing spaces. Modern research from places like the USDA Agricultural Research Service and universities in Israel and Jordan has confirmed what those early growers figured out through observation. These plants are packed with compounds, things like allicin, sulforaphane, cucurbitacins, and flavonoids that our bodies genuinely need. The beautiful part is that these same vegetables thrive in home gardens because they evolved in tough conditions with minimal care. So after years of chasing trendy varieties and complicated growing systems, I finally realized the most powerful plants were the ones people have been growing for thousands of years. Here is what I have learned works, starting with something most of us overlook entirely. The first one I want to talk about is garlic, and I will be honest. For years, I treated garlic as an afterthought. I would toss a few cloves in the ground in fall, forget about them, and pull up these tiny, sad little bulbs in summer. It was embarrassing. Then I read about how garlic was given to the laborers building the pyramids in Egypt specifically to keep them healthy. And I thought, maybe I should actually learn to grow this properly. So I started planting hardneck varieties like Music and German Extra Hardy, putting each clove pointy end up, 4 inches deep, spaced 6 inches apart, in mid to late October here in my Zone 7 garden. The transformation was dramatic. I went from pulling marble-sized bulbs to harvesting heads the size of my fist. And the health benefits are no joke. Garlic contains allicin, which research from the University of Alabama at Birmingham has shown supports cardiovascular health, reduces blood pressure, and has antimicrobial properties. I eat raw garlic almost every day now, crushed and let sit for 10 minutes before consuming, which activates the allicin. Growing it at home means you get it fresh, which is when the medicinal compounds are at their peak. Store-bought garlic that has been sitting in a warehouse for months just does not compare. Now that pairs perfectly with the next one because if garlic is the king of biblical healing vegetables, then onions are the queen. Onions show up repeatedly in ancient texts. The Israelites in the book of Numbers actually complained about missing the onions they ate in Egypt, and I understand why. A good homegrown onion is a completely different experience from what you buy at the grocery store. I grow a long day variety called Walla Walla for sweet onions and Red Wing for storage, starting seeds indoors under grow. Lights about 10 to 12 weeks before my last frost date. The key I missed for years was understanding day length. If you're above the 35th parallel, you need long day varieties. Below it, short day types like Texas 1015. Getting this wrong means you get scallions instead of full bulbs, which is exactly what happened to me my first 3 seasons. Onions are rich in quercetin, a powerful anti-inflammatory flavonoid. Studies published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found that red onions in particular contain some of the highest concentrations of quercetin among all vegetables. I slice them raw into salads, and my joints honestly feel better than they did 10 years ago. Here is one that seems almost too simple, but after growing it myself, I am a total convert. Cucumbers, they are mentioned in the Bible alongside onions and garlic as one of the foods the Israelites craved. And while most people think of cucumbers as mostly water, which they are at, about 96% that water is loaded with silica, potassium, and compounds called cucurbitations that have been studied for anti-cancer properties at places like the University of California, Davis. I grow a variety called Marketmore 76 because it handles heat well and resists most common diseases. I plant them along a simple cattle panel trellis, spacing plants 12 inches apart and train them vertically. This keeps the fruit off the ground, reduces disease, and honestly triples my harvest compared to letting them sprawl. For healing benefits, I eat the skin, which is where most of the fiber and silica concentrate. If you have been peeling your cucumbers, stop. That is where the good stuff lives. Now, before we keep going, I want to mention something quickly. If you're enjoying these tips and you want a complete system for getting significantly more food from every plant in your garden, I put together something called the 30-Day Maximum Yield Protocol. It is a 115-page guide that covers everything from soil biology and strategic pruning techniques to companion planting systems and succession planting schedules. It is $17. And honestly, it is the resource I wish I had when I started because it would have saved me years of trial and error. You can scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description below to grab a copy. All right, let us keep going because we have still got some real game changers coming up. This next one took me a while to appreciate, and I feel a little foolish admitting that. Lentils. They are one of the most mentioned foods in the Bible. Esau literally traded his birthright for a bowl of lentil stew. And when you taste homegrown lentils, you start to understand why someone might make a rash decision over them. Lentils are incredibly high in folate, iron, and protein. And research from the University of Saskatchewan found they are also rich in polyphenols that act as antioxidants. I grow a variety called Eston, which is a small green type that matures in about 90 days. Here is what most people do not realize. Lentils fix nitrogen in the soil through a symbiotic relationship with rhizobium bacteria. So they actually improve your garden while feeding you. I plant them directly in the ground after the last frost, spacing seeds 1 inch apart in rows 12 inches apart. They do not need much fuss. Just keep them weeded early on and water moderately. One 30-foot row gives me enough dried lentils to last through winter in soups and stews. Now, this brings me to something I was completely wrong about for years. Leeks. I always thought leeks were just fancy onions that took too long to grow and were not worth the garden space. I could not have been more wrong. Leeks appear in the same passage as onions and garlic in numbers, and they earned that mention. They are loaded with kaempferol, a flavonoid studied at Wageningen University in the Netherlands that shows strong anti-inflammatory effects. What changed my mind was growing the variety Bandit, which is incredibly cold hardy and can overwinter in my garden with just a layer of straw mulch. I start seeds indoors in February, transplant out in April, and harvest from late fall all the way through early spring. The trick to getting those long white shanks is blanching them, and I do not mean in boiling water. I mean hilling up soil around the stems as they grow about every 3 weeks, adding 2 to 3 inches of soil each time. The flavor of a leek you pull from your own garden in January when nothing else is growing, that is something special. Here is a quick one that packs a serious punch. Bitter herbs. In Exodus, the Israelites were commanded to eat bitter herbs during Passover. And while scholars debate the exact plants, many agree this likely included things like endive, chicory, and dandelion greens. I grow a variety of chicory called puntarelle that is just outstanding. The bitterness comes from compounds called lactocopicrine and lactocin, which research from the University of Bologna has shown stimulate bile production and aid digestion. I direct sour chicory seeds a 1/4 inch deep in early spring or late summer, spacing them 8 inches apart. The leaves are ready to harvest in about 60 days. I will be honest, the first time I ate homegrown chicory, I made a face. But after a couple of weeks of adding it to salads and sautés, my digestion improved noticeably, and I actually started craving the bitter flavor. Your palate adapts, and your gut thanks you. Something I stumbled onto almost by accident is how well black cumin grows in a home garden. Now, this is Nigella sativa, not regular cumin. It is referenced as Ketsa in the book of Isaiah, and it has been used medicinally for thousands of years across the Middle East. I started growing it after reading a review published in the Journal of Medicinal Food that documented over 50 therapeutic applications, from blood sugar regulation to immune support. The seeds contain thymoquinone, which is a potent antioxidant. I grow it much like I grow dill. Direct sow seeds a 1/4 inch deep in spring after the last frost, thin to 6 inches apart, and let it go. It produces these beautiful blue flowers, then seed pods that you harvest when they turn brown and dry on the plant. I grind the seeds and add a teaspoon to smoothies every morning. It has a peppery, slightly bitter taste that grows on you. Now, I want to be straight with you on this next one because I messed it up for years before I figured it out. Fava beans, also called broad beans. These are the beans mentioned throughout the Bible, not green beans or kidney beans as we know them today. Fava beans are incredibly high in L-dopa, a precursor to dopamine, which research from Shahid Beheshti University of Medical Sciences has shown can support brain health and mood. The mistake I kept making was planting them too late. Favas want cool weather. I now plant them in very early spring as soon as the soil can be worked, sometimes even in late fall for an overwintered crop. I use Windsor long pod, sowing seeds 2 inches deep and 6 inches apart. They grow 3 to 4 feet tall and need a simple support. I just run twine between stakes. A 10-foot double row gives me pounds of fresh beans plus all that nitrogen fixation happening underground. Once I got the timing right, favas went from my most frustrating crop to one of my most reliable. This connects naturally to something that people rarely think about growing at home. Coriander, which is the seed of the cilantro plant. In Exodus, manna is described as being like coriander seed in appearance, and there is good reason this spice has been valued for millennia. Coriander seeds contain linalool, a compound studied at King Saud University that shows antibacterial and blood sugar regulating properties. Here is the trick I learned. Instead of fighting cilantro bolting, which every gardener complains about, let it bolt on purpose. Plant cilantro thickly, about 1 inch apart in a block in early spring. When the heat comes and it bolts, just leave it. The flowers attract beneficial insects, and within a few weeks, you get clusters of green seeds that dry to golden brown right on the plant. I harvest them, crush them lightly, and use them in cooking and teas. One planting gives me fresh cilantro leaves, pollinator habitat, and medicinal coriander seeds. 3 harvests from 1 sowing. Let me share one that surprised me when I first tried it because I used to think it was just a weed. Purslane. While not explicitly named in most Bible translations, food historians and archaeobotanists have identified purslane as one of the most commonly consumed greens in the biblical Mediterranean region. And when I looked at the nutrition data, I understood why. Purslane contains more omega-3 fatty acids than any other leafy green ever tested, according to research from the University of Texas at San Antonio. It also provides significant amounts of vitamins A, C, and E, plus minerals like magnesium and potassium. I grow a cultivated variety called Goldberg that has thicker, fleshier leaves than wild purslane. It needs almost nothing. I scatter seeds on the surface of moist soil after the last frost, press them in lightly with my hand, and keep the surface damp for a week. It grows in the worst soil, in full blazing heat, with almost no water once established. Cut it back to 2 inches and it regrows. I add it raw to salads where it has this pleasant lemony crunch. If you're not growing purslane, you're missing out on one of the most nutritious greens that exists. Here is a quick but important one. Dill. It is mentioned in Matthew as one of the herbs the Pharisees tithed, and it was clearly a plant of significant value. Dill contains apigenin, a flavonoid that research from the University of Missouri has shown promotes calmness and may support sleep quality. I grow bouquet dill, sowing seeds directly a 1/4 inch deep starting in mid-spring, and I succession plant every 3 weeks through early summer. Harvest the fronds when the plant reaches about 12 inches tall. Fresh dill in evening tea, about a tablespoon of chopped fronds steeped for 5 minutes, has become part of my nighttime routine. And like coriander, when dill goes to seed, those seeds are medicinal too. Dill seed tea is a traditional remedy for digestive discomfort that actually works. Now we are getting into the part of this list where things get really interesting, and I saved these last few because they genuinely changed how I grow and eat. Rue, mentioned in Luke, is a fascinating herb with powerful medicinal compounds called rutin, which strengthens blood vessels and capillaries. But I need to be upfront. Rue must be handled carefully. The sap can cause photodermatitis, which means it reacts with sunlight on your skin and causes burns. I grow the variety Jackman Blue in a dedicated spot where I will not brush against it accidentally, in a container that gets full sun. I plant it from transplants rather than seed because germination is slow and spotty. I never harvest it barehanded. I use gloves and long sleeves. A few dried leaves made into tea, no more than a pinch, have traditional uses for menstrual support and circulation. This is one where less is absolutely more, and I would recommend doing your own research on dosing before consuming it. But grown responsibly, it is a powerful medicinal plant. The one before my final pick is something I genuinely wish someone had told me about when I first started gardening. Hyssop. It appears repeatedly in the Bible, from the purification rituals in Leviticus to the sponge offered to Jesus on the cross. Hyssop, specifically Hyssopus officinalis, contains volatile oils, including pinocamphone and isopinocamphone, that research from the University of Novi Sad in Serbia has shown have significant expectorant and antimicrobial properties. I grow it from seeds started indoors 8 weeks before last frost, transplanting seedlings 12 inches apart in a well-drained spot with full sun. Once established, hyssop is a perennial that comes back year after year with almost zero maintenance. I dry the leaves and flowers in late summer when the oil content peaks, bundle them, and store them for winter teas. During cold and flu season, a tea made from 1 tablespoon of dried hyssop, steeped for 10 minutes, genuinely helps clear congestion. I went from buying cough remedies every winter to barely needing them. And now we arrive at the one I told you about at the very beginning. The vegetable that honestly changed how I approach my entire garden and my health. It is the humble lentil. No, I am kidding. We already covered lentils. It is actually the fig, and I know some people will say a fig is a fruit, but in biblical agriculture and in the way figs were consumed, they functioned as a staple food alongside vegetables in daily meals, and here is why this deserves the final spot. In 2 Kings, a poultice of figs was applied to King Hezekiah's boil, and he recovered. That sounds like an old story, but modern research from the University of Karachi and multiple studies indexed in phytotherapy research have confirmed that figs contain phycin, a proteolytic enzyme with genuine wound healing and anti-inflammatory properties. The latex from the leaves has been studied for anti-diabetic effects. The fruit itself is dense with potassium, calcium, magnesium, and fiber. I grow a cold, hardy variety called Chicago Hardy in a large 25-gallon container that I can wheel into the garage during the worst of winter. In Zone 7 and warmer, you can plant directly in the ground. I pruned mine to an open vase shape, keeping it to about 6 feet, and last year I harvested over 60 figs from a single tree. 60 figs. Fresh figs are a completely different food from dried ones. The skin is thin, the interior is like jam, and the flavor is complex, honey, berry, and caramel all at once. I eat 2 or 3 fresh every morning during harvest season, which runs from late July through September for me. And here's the part that really got me. After a full season of eating fresh figs regularly, my digestive health improved more than from any supplement I've ever tried. The combination of fiber, enzymes, and prebiotics in fresh figs creates a synergy that you simply cannot get from a pill. Growing a fig tree at home is the single most impactful thing I've done for both my garden and my health, and I spent years thinking figs were too exotic or too difficult for my climate. I was completely wrong. Now let me run through some common mistakes I see, and I made most of these myself, so no judgment here. The first one is growing only modern hybrid vegetables, and ignoring these ancient varieties. Look, I love a good hybrid, tomato as much as anyone, but when you plant exclusively for yield and ignore nutritional density, you are leaving health benefits on the table. The better approach is to dedicate even just 20% of your garden space to these heritage crops, and you will notice the difference in how you feel. The second mistake is treating vegetables only as food and not as medicine. For years, I grew garlic and onions and cucumbers without any awareness of their specific healing properties, which meant I was not harvesting at the right time for maximum potency or preparing them in ways that activated the beneficial compounds. Simply knowing that crushing garlic and waiting 10 minutes before cooking activates alicin changed how I use garlic entirely. The third one is assuming these ancient crops need ancient growing methods. I used to think that because these vegetables have been grown for thousands of years, they did not benefit from modern techniques like drip irrigation, quality compost, and succession planting. Wrong. Applying good modern growing practices to these time-tested crops gives you the best of both worlds, ancient nutrition with modern yields. And the fourth, this is the one that got me the most, is giving up on a crop after one bad season. I nearly abandoned fava beans after 2 failed attempts. I almost stopped trying to grow decent garlic. Every single vegetable on this list took me at least 2 seasons to really get right. Persistence is what separates gardeners who grow healing food from gardeners who just grow groceries. Now, here is that bonus I promised you at the beginning. After growing these biblical vegetables for several seasons, I discovered that interplanting them in specific combinations dramatically increases their beneficial compound production. This is based on research from Wageningen University showing that certain companion plant pairings trigger higher levels of defensive compounds, which are the same compounds that give us the health benefits. My favourite combination is garlic interplanted 8 inches from the base of fig trees, with purslane as a living mulch covering the soil surface underneath. The garlic sulfur compounds help suppress soil pathogens around the fig roots. The purslane shades the soil and retains moisture while adding omega-3 rich greens to your harvest. And the fig provides dappled afternoon shade that keeps the purslane from bolting in peak summer. 3 biblical healing plants in one compact growing area, each making the others more potent. I measured my garlic bulb size in this system versus garlic grown alone, and the interplanted garlic averaged 15% larger. Sometimes the old plants just know how to work together. If you found value in today's tips and you want to go deeper into maximizing every square foot of your garden, I would genuinely recommend checking out the 30-day maximum yield protocol. It is 115 pages that cover the soil biology behind why these plants thrive, strategic pruning techniques that boost harvests, companion planting systems like the one I just described, and succession planting schedules so you are harvesting healing food from spring through frost. It is $17 and it is the same protocol I follow in my own garden every season. You can scan the QR code on screen or click the link in the description below. And honestly, if you only take one thing from it, the soil preparation chapter alone will change your results. I wish I had this guide when I started. It would have saved me a lot of wasted seasons. These 15 vegetables have been nourishing and healing people for thousands of years, and every single one of them can grow in your backyard. I would love to hear which one you're going to try first, or if you're already growing any of these, tell me about your experience in the comments. Happy gardening, and I will see you in the next one.